Morning all, I have a very exciting game to show you this morning. Paul Keres playing Fischer in the Bled Zagreb Belgrade's Candidates Tournament of 1959. A very interesting game from many perspectives. Paul Keres was featured 4 times in Fischer's My 60 Memorable Games. Not many players got as many as 4 games. Now, this game wasn't in the 60 Memorable Games book, presumably because at one point there was something which may not have made the game as interesting, and I've got a very exciting resource to show you which basically can change the whole perspective on this game. Paul Keres elected for an opening, I detest as well the London system. Even though I'm from London, I detest playing against the London system. Paul Keres, just as a reminder, was an Estonian chess grandmaster, born 1916, died 1975. He was a renowned chess writer. He was among the world's top players from the mid-1930s to the mid-1960s. He narrowly missed a chance at the World Championship match on 5 occasions. He won the 1938 Avro tournament, which was the most important tournament leading up to the breakout of the Second World War. This led to negotiations for a title match against the champion Alexander Alekhine, but the match never took place due to World War II. After the war, Keres was runner-up in the candidates tournaments on 4 consecutive occasions. Due to these and other strong results, many chess historians consider Paul Keres to be the strongest player never to become world champion. He was nicknamed Paul II, the Eternal Second, the Crown Prince of Chess. Keres is the only player in chess history to defeat 9 undisputed world champions. So in this game, Paul played d4 in an earlier round against Fischer, where the players play each other 4 times, believe it or not. Keres had suffered with e4, even though he had prepared an innovation against Fischer, sacrificing his queen, and that game is on this channel. But here he tests Fischer's King's Indian setup, but not actually going into a proper King's Indian, instead using the dreadfully dull London system. So knight f3, g6, and this bishop f4 move. And to know how Fischer played against the London system, I think is very, very interesting. Normally King's Indian players would often play d6 as a matter of routine and bishop g7. Fischer shows here that actually maybe d6 is an issue because of this bishop, and later white can play undermining moves against this chain. These 2 pawns can come under fire. So Fischer's strategy here is interesting. He just doesn't touch his d pawn for the moment. He just puts the bishop on g7, fianchettoing it. After knight bd2, again he doesn't touch the d pawn here. It's like he doesn't want this bishop to have pressure on his pawn structure. He plays c5 here. Paul Keres reacts with c3. Now we see c takes d4, c takes d4, and now not d6 but d5. And technically there's something interesting going on here which Paul Keres noticed. Paul Keres has also noticed perhaps that Fischer is sometimes a little bit on the materialistic side. So perhaps he was wondering here in this continuation, how would Fischer react if someone played a bit like Fischer, using Fischer's own style against him in some way, this grabbing a pawn sometimes. It's a trait which Capablanca used to do, is be able to sometimes grab a pawn, especially a sense pawn, and win games like that. But here there's an opportunity for Paul Keres to be materialistic, and he takes it with both hands. He plays in this position bishop takes b8, giving up the dreaded London system bishop to try and win what seems to be a measly a pawn. So rook takes b8, check, double attacking. It looks very crude kind of play, the kind of play a chess computer from 1960s or 70s would do just to win a pawn, not really factoring in the decentralization of the queen, the loss of tempo, the fact that the king's still in the center. Very crude continuation just to win a pawn, but testing Fischer in terms of How is he reacting to a materialism approach? So queen takes a7. What can be the immediate refutation of this? Well, it's interesting here. Fischer's move seems actually very, very powerful, and engines tend to like it the more they look at Fischer's move in this position. He doesn't want to castle here. He wants to try and somehow punish the decentralized queen. Interestingly, and let's just check this again. I've already done some analysis on this position. One of the early engine suggestions here at a certain depth is actually to play the move queen c7. This doesn't really immediately do anything for this bishop to extend the scope of the bishop. From that positional perspective, okay, it doesn't tick the box there, but it does give white some trouble here. It seems black's a little bit better. For example, queen a3. Say this continuation, just castling e3, rook a8, and here queen c3 you might think it's natural, but queen d6, black's doing very well here. It seems there's enough pressure for the pawn basically, and there's a resource like bishop a4 which could be handy as well. So this position, there's pressure, there is enough pressure for the pawn, it seems. So, but actually Fischer's move is more to do with this bishop. Interestingly, he plays knight e4, so he's trying to extend the scope of this bishop. A bit of pressure on d2, and he's got the forcing move available now. Knight takes d2. So this forcing move knight takes d2 is a bit of an annoyance for white, because then there's pressure on d4. So white plays what seems to be an absolutely logical move actually. If he does want to take on e4, d takes, knight d2, we have a powerful pawn sack here, e3, disruptive. So say f takes, black could castle, and with this bishop hemmed in, let's go with g3 to try and finish out it, but bishop c6, knight f3, but now there's the resource e5, and this is quite dangerous for white. If d takes, bishop takes, black's better there, and if that's left alone, say bishop g2, then black's still better with a move like e takes d4. Kick the queen, and there's a lot of pressure here, which makes it very nice. If white dares castle, I think there's even a problem on this diagonal. Bishop takes f3, just showing the pressure is can be quite crushing for tactics. So this continuation, if we go back, knight takes e4 is to be avoided because of this e3 resource. So this looks sensible to play just e3, trying to stabilize the position and make d4 more solid. Fischer takes on d2 though, and now after knight takes d2 plays the very energetic e5. So the whole play by Fischer is extending the scope of this bishop along this diagonal. If he can get access to b2, that's great as well. Now white really doesn't want to help black extend the scope of this bishop, just reinforces d4 again. So we've got two pieces trying to just reinforce d4 against this bishop, and ideally leave a blockade against the isolated queen's pawn. Black castles here, and white can't react routinely here. If he tries to castle with bishop e2, then we could have e takes d4, knight takes d4, and in this position queen c7 is very, very strong because the threat is rook a8 actually winning the queen. So the queen has to run back, but then bishop takes d4, e takes, rook f e8 keeps the king in the center, and this is big trouble now, as you'd expect. If king f1, this sort of move now threatens queen c1 check, mating, and here there's just no time to provide king safety. Queen b6 energetic enough, with the rooks coming to the seventh rank potentially, or just winning this centre pawn. Black stands a lot better. So after castling here, given the routine move bishop e2 would fell to ed and queen c7, we see actually queen c5, and asking Fischer perhaps to waste a bit of time with d5. Fischer's not having any of that. he says to Paul Keres, take another pawn if you dare with rook c8. This d pawn must be hot surely, but let's check it out. If queen takes d5, which actually might technically be one of the better moves, queen e7 looks really dangerous for queen b4 check. So in this position, for example, bishop e2, bishop e6, queen drops back, then we have this queen b4 check. And black's bound to get some compensation now with the king disrupted on f1, the rook's not connected. So this kind of continuation gets actually quite crushing here. This is just very, very unpleasant for white. So, okay, so after rook c8, Paul Keres decides queen b4 might be a bit safer than trying to be even more materialistic, grabbing that d5 pawn. Fischer plays rook e8, and now we see the natural bishop e2. So it looks as though white hasn't been too greedy. It's only one pawn, and he's holding up d4. Fischer takes on d4, knight takes d4, and now plays a very energetic move, queen h4, which is designed against the natural castling move here, because there's pressure now on d4 for this loose bishop, potentially on e2. So if white castles here, bishop takes d4 is winning material because of that loose bishop on e2. So white can't routinely castle after queen h4. If he plays king f1 again, that's misery lands. In this position, black has enough play, enough piece pressure here. Just the rooks are not connected again. There's ample compensation, and even black's getting back some of the material. So this would be very, very nice for black, this kind of position. Okay, so black's doing very well there. But okay, it might be one of the lesser evil choices though in this position to consider the move king f1, because it's already a difficult position for white here. He doesn't really want to play g3. I think that would just, well, actually there's not even queen h3, there's an even stronger move, queen e4 here. And what does white want to do here? The king in the center, this kind of stuff now works. Queen takes d4, that pin. So queen e4, and again, if castles, we just take on d4 to win e2. Okay, so after queen h4, Paul Keres is in a difficult position, and he goes for more materialism. Queen takes b7, which might technically be one of the better moves in the circumstance. So bishop takes d4 is played here, offering the d7 bishop. Was this the strongest move from Fischer? It looks absolutely logical in many respects, play bishop d4 to try and exploit the king in the center. There doesn't seem to be much to improve on bishop takes d4. Queen takes d7, and now bishop takes b2. So here black is just one pawn down, and it's opposite coloured bishops. White wants to keep the rook, but now the king is disrupted after check. And now, okay, Fischer tries to wrench open this e file to expose this loose bishop on e2. He plays the move d4, sacking a pawn here temporarily, just to get pressure on e2. So after e takes d4, which might not be the safest, perhaps a safer option is queen g4. So we'll go with e takes d4, queen e4, threatening that bishop immediately. And here it would be embarrassing to play bishop f3, that would be a howler. Queen e1 is mating, really exploiting the king in the center. The correct move, queen g4, one of the correct moves rather, or queen b5 is possible as well. But queen g4 is played. Fischer now plays queen c2, and white wants to wriggle out of this, and it's actually quite difficult in this position. This bishop is a liability, and in fact there's some amazing resources coming up here, but here is another one as early as this position. We've got the queen protecting the bishop, protecting the rook. Now if bishop b5, just trying to get rid of one of these tactical liabilities in this position, if bishop b5 in this position, apparently bishop e1, just threatening mate, is actually really, really strong. For example, if takes, check, and here with the rook, we don't want to take this rook, we play check, and now we can safely take this rook. So in this position, if king e3, then queen takes h1 is okay. Okay, so here it seems absolutely logical to try and wriggle out with g3, and here I've never been so excited to find a resource, to be honest, in an old Fischer game. This hasn't been mentioned on kibitzing up until now on chessgames.com, and actually I do have certain books which just don't mention this, that this next move by Fischer was a blunder, absolute blunder. But there's a really amazing technical move which is available to Fischer here. In the game, we see Fischer blundering with queen takes a2. We know I can say that if I trust engine technology at the moment, that this move is a blunder. Queen takes a2. It's a natural tendency to try and sometimes get back material, but it worked out in the game here because Paul Keres plays an absolute howler of a move. He plays in this position, well, white to play and blunder. Can you guess what Paul Keres played in this position at move 24? So white to play and blunder horrifically. If I give you 10 seconds, spot the blunder. Paul Keres plays bishop b5, believe it or not, which goes into the hands of the perks of queen a2 to be able to play now. Can you spot it? Queen d5, and after this Fischer easily was winning now. He's absolutely winning. He's double attacking two loose pieces, so he really has celebrated the rook's lack of connection and the king stumbling around to try and get to safety. So in the game continuation was bishop takes e8, check, so bishop up, and here bishop e1 was played. End of game. Paul Keres resigned. The interesting thing for me though is when checking this game, well, queen takes a2, annotators have rightly pointed out white could have just been equal with bishop f3. There's nothing much going on here. The loose bishop issue has just vanished. Now, any temporary advantages you get in chess, sometimes it really is important to take that opportunity to use that temporary advantage. The loose bishop on e2 has vanished. The disconnection of the rooks is about to be repaired. There's no problems here, it seems, for white at all. Basically equal. And this is what annotators of the game have claimed. But the thing is, which I find very, very exciting, is that at a certain depth, a seemingly innocuous resource valued at less than half a pawn, no big deal, in this position apparently seems to turn out to be absolutely crushing. Absolutely crushing. And this hasn't been mentioned by any annotators I've seen or commentators of this game previously. I recently had to get a new computer, so it's a reasonable computer now with an i5 running Houdini 64-bit, and it does come up at depth 20 that this resource categorically wins here. Queen takes a2 was a blunder by Fischer. I hope I haven't mentioned the resource. Can you spot it? You might be able to guess the resource, but definitely not the reasons behind it, I assure you. If I give you 10 seconds from now, can you spot a potentially winning resource? 10 seconds starting from now. There's a very temporary factor in this position, the bishop on e2, to try and exploit. Okay, the resource, you might have guessed the move, but I doubt any of you will see the reasons behind this. Why this bishop d2 is absolutely winning here. Let's give some examples. Now let's say, first of all, bishop b5, because the queen hasn't taken on a2 to have this queen d5 punishing resource. None of that. The thing is here, the queen is a bit overloaded protecting the rook, as that bishop's left the protection of the rook. h5, where can the queen go? White could try sacrificing the exchange. I don't think that's particularly good to play rook takes d2 here. So let's assume queen f3. In this position, rook c3, and the queen overloading is absolutely emphasized. End of game. So that's a very, very clear continuation, which absolutely loses. Bishop b5. Let's try bishop f3. And here it gets really interesting. h4, there's not many places for the queen. The bishop's cutting out all of these dark squares. So queen h4. And in this position, one of the more crushing moves is actually rook c3 here, believe it or not. So again, we're celebrating the overloading of the bishop now protecting this rook. And what can white do about this? If he plays queen f6 trying to protect the bishop, which is protecting the rook. So let's go with queen f6. Then bishop g5. Queen takes, rook takes f3. It's absolutely crushing here because of that f2 issue. And you might ask, well, hold on a sec. In this position, what about bishop e2 here? Well, rook takes e2 and then bishop g5, or queen d3, even quicker, mate. So that's no good. So in this position, rook c3 is absolutely crushing in this position. So let's go back to this bishop d2. So we've tried bishop b5, we've tried bishop f3, and if we try king g2, again, now h5, trying to exploit the loose bishop on e2. Say queen f3, rook c3. So it just seems that this is absolutely winning. Bishop d2. Whatever white seems to do here. There's a line note in the bishop f3 variation, which I thought was quite interesting. I'm trying to find it here. Queen d7, yes, queen d7. Now this might be why I think this resource wasn't picked up. So queen d7. It looks as though the rook c3 resource has been taken out of the equation here. So how can white have a problem in this position? Amazingly, black has a fantastic resource in this position which engines pick up, and this shows something about chess, that the technical truth of games can maybe be found years later with advancing engineering technology, at least more conveniently. I just casually checking this game out to present you, and this bishop d2 explodes into significance from being slightly better for black to being absolutely categorically winning. And this is one of the reasons. In this position after queen d7, black has a fantastic resource. Bishop e3 threatening mate, temporary piece sacrifice, f takes, rook takes, and here white is busted. The queen is just about holding on to the rook. What can white do here about this bishop on f3? What can white do here? He can try to sacrifice the queen. That's better for white. Let's see, for example, queen d5, rook c3, and still problem with this d1 here. Absolutely crushing. White has no defence in this position. So this queen d7 seems absolutely refuted by bishop e3. And as soon as I start seeing these resources, I'm very, very excited all of a sudden that in this classic Fischer game, which didn't make it to Fischer's memorable games, Fischer had technically an absolutely forced win. Instead of queen takes a2, to play bishop d2. The more you look at it with an engine, the stronger it gets. I challenge everyone on YouTube to verify the findings here. Bishop d2 categorically wins. Materialism could have been punished in this game. So in the game, you know, I guess it didn't make it to memorable games because it was just the memorable games book, because it was just a horrible blunder here. And when bishop f3 seems to draw, but it was actually Fischer that blundered first. That's the point I'd like to make. Fischer blundered first. He didn't have to play queen takes a2 against the very best defence. Bishop d2 appears to be absolutely winning. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.